Hey friends, welcome to Parent Cafe Live. So we are continuing on with our mini session lessons, and today we're going to be talking about celebrating our kids, celebrating togetherness. So instead of celebrating things and motivating our kids with things, we are going to build some basically motivations to doing the things that they need to be doing. So it's called intrinsic motivation instead of extrinsic. So when we have extrinsic motivation, basically those are external factors that are motivating our child to complete something, accomplish something. And so often as parents, that if we use intrinsic motivation, it's typically fear-based. So usually it's, well, you're not going to get to watch TV tonight if you don't do this, okay? So there's a fear of not getting to watch TV. So instead of just wanting to be helpful or completing the tasks, and we're going to have tasks our whole life that we have to do that maybe aren't what we want to do, and if we don't learn how to do that and just do them, it's a lot harder lesson for our kids. So like my 5-year-old is a lot of like really thinking life's unfair right now because he has a few chores, or if I don't know, just getting ready every morning. It's the same thing: getting dressed, doing chores, eating breakfast, doing brushing teeth, combing hair, and every day he picks something else that I am forcing him to do that's just really unfair. So this lesson's really cool because I'm starting to use some of these tactics a little bit, because I realize that I do use a lot of extrinsic motivation to try to get my son to do things. So basically, we're gonna learn how to celebrate our kids through our noticing. So remember, we had that language with noticing. And the reason we want to build noticing and that self-esteem, self-motivation, is because we need to get ourselves from down here to the survival state all the way up to the executive functioning state, so that as we grow and learn, we can problem solve and have empathy. And then also for our development, having like our serotonin and dopamine levels. So those are hormones that are reward hormones that are triggered by things like us feeling helpful and accomplished. So those are really good things for our mental health, physical health. It's just things we're supposed to have. And when we trigger those, that often like trains your brain as well, that you want to do these like self-motivating intrinsic things. So our noticing language is you, and describe what your child did. So you picked up your dirty clothes, and then so how it helped others. So mommy didn't have to do it for you. That was very helpful. So our verb in there. So remember, the you, describe what your child did. So how it helped other people, and that was using a verb, the action verb of what they did. Or you can also say, you did it. You put all your clothes away without me having to remind you. That's amazing. I hope you're proud of yourself. So those are things we're gonna do. So instead of using fear to try to motivate our kids to do things, and then kind of aggressive and a little bit of passive if we're using those extrinsic values. So when we're creating a fear of loss of something that they want, or we're just creating fear because we're being too aggressive, those are not triggering rewards, and that's going to keep us probably in survival state and or emotional state. So we might have moved up a little bit, but we're stuck here, and we're going to be stuck here longer, and we don't want that. We want our kids to be up here, because then we can teach new skills, we can help them, we can congratulate them and provide encouragement, and they're at a place where they can accept all of that, and it's going to build. It's going to build in this prefrontal cortex, which is our logical brain, and we start to do things because it's just the right thing to do. And it does make us feel good to be helpful to other people. So when we see these things as they're being helpful and it's part of the family unit instead of it's just this task I have to do because it's so unfair and I'm the kid and my parents are so mean, because I know I heard this morning about how unfair I was and my son wished he'd never been born. He's 5, you guys. Seriously, this is the language he's using. And I asked him why he used that language and he couldn't answer me, and he flipped his tune really quickly. But he's learning this language from somewhere. So our kids, when they get into that emotional state, the language they're using, they've heard from other adults, because this is where, like, that's where they learn. So instead of being an emotional, empathetic point, they're in this reactionary, sassy, verbal vomit of whatever comes to their brain. And it's usually, the words that come out usually aren't quite what they mean. Like, it can sound a lot harsher than what they meant because they only have the tools that they have, and they'll build better language skills as we go. But it's shocking as a parent to hear some of that stuff, and you're just like, whoa, like, we all need to check ourselves here. So instead of me getting angry this morning, I just asked him how he was feeling. And then I told him it made me sad when he did those things and he used language like that. And then he never apologized, but he just kind of switched his tune a little bit. Like, oh, I stepped a line. I didn't like that line, and now I don't know why I used that, why I went there. So 5 years old saying stuff like that. And I know he's not the only one, and I know kids sometimes get dramatic, and I feel like my son has really good communication skills and really gets to get out his emotions in big ways sometimes. And I've realized I haven't done as great of a job building an empathetic child as I would like. So that comes down to me teaching and role modeling. And with that is my reactions to him. So with this noticing stuff, we're going to model what being empathetic to our child's situation is. And then they're going to be more empathetic to others. So I think when I was able to share my thoughts and feelings about his comments, he did pick up on that. So, I mean, that is empathy, right? But instead of using the emotional word vomit, I would like him to think about it a little bit more and be able to recognize and use some words that are more appropriate. So when we're doing this, that's what we're going to do. So celebrating things as they happen, okay, can happen. And you can also celebrate like daily. So do any of you do like a high and low of the day at your dinner table? So this is kind of one of those things. But then once you are told what like the high is, or this celebration thing, so something your child wants to celebrate, you are going to create some sort of family cheer. And you want to relate everything back to it being about them and then how that helps the family as a whole. So you need to name the event and then relate the celebration to the family as a whole. So hooray for, well, my son's name's Aiden. Hooray for Aiden. Aiden learned 10 new sight words today. Now that Aiden's learned 10 new sight words, we're celebrating all the cool things our family's learning and learning how to read together. Something like that. Like, you can really pull words from anywhere. I mean, it's just really important to let them share some things that they're proud of. And that builds their self-esteem when they get to share that. But so like I have a 5-year-old, so I just gave you an example of that, but some of you might have like a 1-year-old. So you want to show and celebrate like when they've, taken their first steps or pulled themselves up or started crawling or used a spoon for the first time. I mean, there's lots of things. And I feel like When we have babies, we tend to kind of do this without thinking as much because they're not able to like talk back and have the sass. So I think if you recognize that, you'll notice that some of that you're doing. But maybe your kid's older and, you know, your things are going to be like they took their driving test, or they made a good decision, like with something to do with a friendship or something. So that's really important. So some examples that I have for you. So like to celebrate new things, we really have to think and be intentional about the words and how we're delivering them. So let's say we're at the grocery store and we say something like this. If you are good while I shop, I'll give you a piece of candy at the checkout. So that's kind of a bribe, right? I mean, how many of us have done that though, trying to like eliminate the begging through the store, or, you know, get them to be good while we're in there. And it doesn't always work either. So then you're even more frustrated because they still don't understand why they didn't get their candy at checkout. But it's definitely an external fear-based motivation. It's not because they just want to be good or helpful. It creates a pattern of children thinking, what will I get if I'm good? So if they're good, they'll start to ask like, well, if I'm good, can I have this, this, or this? And you're like, dang it, that just worked against me because I don't want them doing that. So like innocently enough, we thought it was going to be helpful, but then they use our words. They pick up on that's the norm. That's how we get things done in our family. Versus, wow, you helped find all the groceries on our list, so we would have everything the family needs. That was so helpful. So making them a part of that journey is going to be important to help curb anything during. But over time, you would start to develop that they're helping you when they go to the store. And you could start by prepping them like, oh, you're going to come help me shop. Make sure I don't forget anything. Maybe you can hold my list. As they get a little older, maybe you can check off the list. Things like that. So here's another example. At bedtime, bedtime's hard sometimes, right? If you get out of bed one more time, I'm moving bedtime to be an hour earlier tomorrow night. Man, I have to go to bed early if I don't go to bed? That's the only reason I'm going to do it, so I don't have to go to bed early tomorrow, right? That's the message that they're getting, like that's why we're doing it, and they only have to be good long enough to get through not getting that punishment. So there's that fear base. Versus giving choices. So you can lie in your bed and read, or you can lie in your bed and sleep. Which do you choose? And the child says, I want to read. Good for you. That's a great choice. You go ahead and lie down and read. So that's intrinsic motivation. So giving them choices helps their willingness to comply. And I don't know about you, if I read in bed, I'm like zonked out. But it creates at least some quiet time, and they're coming down and relaxing a little bit in bed. And they're, you know, kids have, if you have a bedtime routine, like they're pretty tired by that time of night anyways. But you're going to see a lot more compliance than just using these threats. And some kids start to see them as empty threats. And then you just start having more and more problems with the power struggles at home. Versus turning it into something like, awesome, you made a good choice. So you presented them with two good choices versus them just running out of bed, but they felt like, they're not just making me go to sleep. All right, I can do this. I can stay in bed and read. That's all I wanted to do anyways, right? So think of things like that, or things that they like, okay, you can go to bed and go to sleep, or you can go to bed and listen to some music, because some of our kids really love music. I don't recommend anything with screen time, mostly because that just makes our brain fire. It stimulates, and it is going to be harder to go to bed. And then there's things with like eye strain and things like that too. But and I don't know, it's just a different kind of stimuli. So definitely don't use screen. I'm not recommending you use screen time for that. If that's something you need to do or have to do, make that choice based on your family, and you guys will know what that looks like. No judgment, but I know my kid will stay up and keep watching TV, so I lose that battle and then it stinks. So I don't like that choice. So those are just some ways that you can talk to your child, and you notice the difference in them. So the way there was that threat, and again, I think it goes back to like passive and aggressive and being assertive, like those throw in. So when you're giving choices and you're celebrating those choices that are made, and celebrating like helpfulness, you are definitely being assertive with your words. You're using direct language, and kids pick up on that and do much better with that. So just kind of monitor how you react. Or if you're watching this like with a partner or spouse, kind of watch each other, because sometimes the best mirror is our partner showing it to us, like how we respond, react, or talk to our children, and when they voice their concern or want to understand where we're coming from, because sometimes we don't notice. We get kind of like lost in the moment, and that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. It's just nice to reflect, because I think we've all been in places where we're like, gosh, that did not go the way I thought it was going to go, and I'm not sure what to do. So these are just some things to try and see if they work better. I really do think your power struggles will diminish if you start doing this. And then, of course, celebrating togetherness adds to that contribution and helpful factor that kids need and thrive on. And it's going to trigger those happy hormones, those good juices that make our brains flow really well. So the serotonin and dopamine. So to build empathy, to build like self-motivation and awareness of others and all that, there's all these things that tie into this celebrating our togetherness. So we are celebrating Aiden because they got 8 smiley faces on their daily report card. And when we celebrate about how Aiden made good choices today, we celebrate all the good choices our families makes together. So that's a fun way to do it. And I'm giving you examples straight from my life, because my child has to have a daily report card, because he doesn't always make great choices, and he is very strong-willed and is very verbal and loves to be a goofball and loves to do and have everything go his way. And he's not always great at sharing, and he's not always great at keeping his hands to himself. A lot of things come from being a only child, because he's been in daycare throughout. He is a younger kindergartner. I mean, there's a lot of things developmentally. It's just where he's at. It doesn't make it any less frustrating. It doesn't make it any less difficult for his teacher. You know, when you have that kid that is just a little harder to curb. And I put a lot of these things into practice, but he is exhausting, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes my emotional state is as far as I can get, and I stay there, and I have to work on that, especially if I am gonna expect him to. And so this is a good way to time out and celebrate those things. So instead of using fear, instead of using punishment, like, you really just change your language and you celebrate your kids. And then when we celebrate our family together and honor our kid and as a part of that family unit, it really does build self-esteem, because I feel like we're our own worst critics. And hearing like the language my son used today, like he wished he'd never been born, like that is insane to me, that he has this concept where he just feels worthless and like life is out of his control, and a lot of it is. And he hasn't built this like intrinsic motivation yet. Like, he has on some things, but not everything. And so it just seems unfair and no fun, and like the world's coming down on him. His world's this big right now. So I think this is going to be really helpful for us to use at our house. So you can build a chant, you can build your language however you want. You can actually build some fun little sing-song things that kids love to do. Have them help you make one up, like hip hip hooray, Aiden's had a great day, something like that. That's just off the top of my head, you guys. So please forgive me for its simpleness, but sometimes that's all you need. Like, don't overcomplicate things. Just whatever works and comes naturally to you guys. Like, the more you kind of goof around and have fun, I don't know, I feel like that builds trust and open communication, and like it's fun to be a little silly sometimes. We don't have to be so serious about everything that happens with our kids. And I think that's another place where this comes in, because I'm not going to punish my kid for every single thing that happens, because some of it's just stuff he has to learn, and he has to learn in the moment. So like if I see that he reacted and made bad choices in class, typically like not staying on task or something, I can't really do anything about that until I witness him doing it and I present him his choices. Or I can congratulate him when he is on task, like doing homework or chores or just stuff around the house, or when he's being helpful. It helps him want to be better. So we're seeing a big change. Like, he's very proud of himself when he has these daily report cards that a majority is smiley faces, or there's no frowny faces. And when he has a really bad day, he's like distraught when he has to show us that little slip of paper. And I know he's not proud of himself. And I'm not going to harp on him about that, because he already knows that like there is some consequences that goes along with that, because instead of getting to watch TV or something, we have to spend time practicing something or having the discussion about how we need to respect people. But I'm not going to like make it seem like it's the end of the world, because it's not. And there's some things and skills we need to work on. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to move on and go on to the next day. So, and I believe his teacher's the same way, where she's like, you just need to prove to me that you can do this, because usually that's a consequence through like missing out on time on recess, and they have to practice doing whatever they didn't do, and then they get to go back out to recess, and then they start each day fresh. And we really need to focus on doing that too, or taking segments of the day and starting fresh at each segment of the day, because just because your morning was bad doesn't mean your afternoon has to be bad, or bedtime was bad doesn't mean wake up has to be bad. Like, we just kind of have to do some restarts. And so our next lesson, we are going to learn more about empathy, how to role model that as a parent, and it's going to be more of like the noticing stuff and more of the language. And it's really going to be about us staying calm and mirroring to them what they look like. And so all this stuff builds on, and you're going to start using bunches and pieces of it together. It's not going to be separated. You're going to see where you can tie in things to help support when you're trying to build empathy, when you're trying to celebrate your family, when you're putting kindness out into the world, when we're building confidence, when we're trying to organize our feelings and regulate. So that's what I have for today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about celebrating togetherness, celebrating your family as a unit. So all these lessons that we teach our kids, it's them contributing to the overall family. And we can celebrate that, and we can build intrinsic motivation in our kids, basically that's self-motivation, and reduce power struggles, and reduce just like low self-esteem, I guess. So that's what I have for today. I look forward to seeing you all again. Please subscribe, click the bell for notifications of new uploads, and we'll see you soon.